Hello, Heron and Riverside students. We're going to continue to talk about acids and bases today and classifying them. How can we tell if a substance is an acid or a base? So the properties of acids include they taste sour, they will turn litmus paper red, they have a pH less than 7, and they oftentimes will react with metal. And we'll talk a little bit more in the future about what is litmus paper, what is pH, all of those things. On the right, you see all sorts of different acids, some of which you probably have around your house. Then the properties of bases is that they taste bitter, they turn litmus paper blue, they have a pH greater than 7, they have a slimy or slippery texture. What is an acid and what is a base? Well, we have this guy named Arrhenius who a long time ago came up with the idea that an acid has H plus ions in solution. Do you remember what an ion is? And then Arrhenius' definition of a base is it has OH minus ions in solution. So we can look at acids and bases, and if they have hydrogen or hydroxide ions in it, we can determine if they are an acid or a base and classify it that way. Then we also have Bronston-Lowry's definition. This was another scientist who actually thought acids will donate an H plus ion and bases will accept an H plus ion. So these are different, but they still are talking about acids and bases. And we will look at them differently depending on what we are discovering with our acids and bases. So this equation that we see here is an acid-base reaction. And what we have is we have HCl, which if we remember correctly, that is hydrochloric acid. And then NaOH, which is sodium hydroxide, which is a base. And that will yield water and salt, NaCl, sodium chloride. Anytime we have an acid and base reacting together, it will yield, or it will give us a water and some sort of salt, just like we have here. Now we're going to talk a little bit about the pH scale. This is likely something you have heard about before, and if you work at a pool or you've been to a pool, you might know that they look at the pH when they're taking water samples and figuring out what are the different levels of chlorine in the water today and what are the different chemicals in the water. Is it safe? Do we need to add something to better neutralize it? So the pH scale is used to determine the concentration of hydrogen ions within a solution. And over here we have a pH scale. Something that is very basic has a high pH, and something that is acidic is very low. So an acid will have a pH between 0 and 7, or say 6.99999. And then bases have a pH above 7, so between 7 and 14. And our pH scale does not go above 14, as we see there. And again, it's a scale between 0 and 14. And if we look here, 7 is completely neutral. So last class we watched a video and saw that water is both an acid and a base, and that is because, typically speaking, it can have acidic properties and basic properties depending on what other chemicals are present. But if it's pure water, it has a pH of 7. If something's completely neutral, it has a pH of 7. And then the litmus paper will be red if it's acidic or blue if it's basic. And we see on this scale all sorts of examples of acids and bases. So right here, these are all acids, and up here is all bases. And we see coffee, for example, is pretty acidic. And that is why some people sometimes say, like, my coffee tastes extra acidic today. Or tomato juice, if you eat a lot of tomatoes or drink tomato juice or different things like that, you might have heartburn, and that's because of the acids in your body. Versus like a base, one example of a base would be Tums. If you might eat Tums if you're having heartburn or having stomach problems, and that is because there's likely too much acid in your stomach, and the base of the Tums will help to balance that out. And then we see here, we can also have paper that that we put into solutions and see exactly something depending on the color that the paper shows us. Is it an acid or a base? And unfortunately, I don't have any of those home with me. I only have them in the lab at school. But maybe you've seen these before, that we can put a little piece of paper, a special paper, in a solution in an acid or a base, and depending on what color it is, it will tell us what that pH is. We can look at a pH scale, and we'll continue to dive deeper into these in the next few classes. I'm excited for the rest of class today, because you will get to do a scavenger hunt around your house and see, can you find acids and can you find bases? And notice that our acids a lot of times we can find in the kitchen, but then our bases a lot of times could be stuff that you find in cleaners and whatnot. So have fun and enjoy the scavenger hunt throughout the rest of the class.